Today, I feel like we get to really jump into more of the intersection between nervous system and menstrual cycle work and the power of being able to use the menstrual cycle as kind of a playground and as a pathway to integration, a pathway to our authentic selves, back to our body, and to actually learn the language of our body and our nervous system. Today, we're going to be talking about the menstrual phase and just the wisdom and the gifts within that phase that can really guide us and teach us how to discern emotional reactivity from like our emotional truth. Like when those responses are telling us something that we need to know, that's very much grounded in truth. And when we are just acting from old patterns, right? Without that awareness, without that consciousness. And what I love about bringing in the menstrual cycle into this and these phases into this is because it's not that we can only tap into this skill or practice it or learn about ourselves in the menstrual phase, but it's when this ability is most at the surface, which means that it becomes easier to work with. If we're trying to navigate our triggers in, let's say, follicular or ovulatory phase, when we're feeling the most resilient, our hormone pattern is supporting stress resilience. We have higher estrogen, which kind of is those like rose-colored glasses that helps us perceive our experience in a different way. Okay. It may be hard to really grab onto what are those stories, what are those truths, what are those things that are coming up for me. It's more slippery then, right? And so if we start to work with the menstrual phase, when all of those, that reactivity, the emotional information is really loud, we can sit with it and we can start to understand, how do these things feel in my body? How does this show up for me? And once you get a feel for it and the quality of it, you can then notice when those things show up in your other phases in that like not as loud way, the more subtle way, the more slippery way. So this becomes such a powerful tool where you then get to do the work when you're most aligned to do it, instead of trying to journal and do like kind of deep shadow work when you're like, life is great, everything's amazing, and you're like trying to find your way there. No, let's wait till our body kind of presents that up to us and get a feel for what the experience is. And so our first journal prompt here is for you to take a minute or two to write out like, what thoughts do you have when you think about the menstrual phase, being on your period? What are the thoughts that are typically running through your mind about yourself, about how you feel? You can also look at this from the perspective of like, what are the things that people say, either to you directly or about women on their periods, that are most triggering? Like that you just get so pissed off when people make these jokes or these side comments or dismiss this or that, and it gets you, right? Okay, so I know for myself, I used to feel very much like these things were happening to me, right? I was very much victim mentality, but I also felt so much anger, and like I would feel very triggered by people making jokes about me being on my period, or dismissing the way I communicated or what I said, like, oh, well, you must be PMSing, right? Like that one just used to irritate me so much. And now I can see that as like, this was revealing something to me, right? Where it was like, yes, I had internalized all these beliefs. So it was like, I get it. Or like the idea of like being crazy or whatever. It's like, I mean, I get where it's coming from, but there's almost this part of me inside that's like, that's not it. And part of the energy of the menstrual phase is this sort of mama bear, warrior, like truth bomb energy. And biologically, what's happening is our hormones are at their lowest. So the veil is thin. We don't have the hormonal buffer to soften the edges. Okay. So what that means is that our emotional experience, our internal experience, it will find a way out. It will find a way out of us. All right. And so the question really is like, where is that coming from? Is this coming from just reactivity and anger and lashing out? Is that how it's getting out? Or is it coming from a conscious, responsive way, right? Like that's where we want to get to, where we can feel all of this stuff going on within us. And we can also know that we're acting from like the truth of it and not just like the surface irritation. So now I want you to take a minute or two and journal out, how do you currently see this sort of mama bear, warrior, truth bomb, like self-advocate showing up in your life? And I don't want you to worry right now about whether it's like, this is a way that you're proud that it's showing up, or you think that it's good or bad, or like, don't worry about any of those labels, and just see like when you're in that place, what triggers it? How does it come out? What are the ways that you communicate it? And just get a sense of how she's currently showing up for you. Because I think that's the most important thing to remember in this is Mama Bear, but not Mama Bear for someone else. Okay, this is Mama Bear for you. This is the version of you that says, hold up, like I have needs. I need. Very much has this energy, right? What's true for me. So then as we're moving towards this distinction between reactivity and sort of a more conscious responding, I think we first need to unpack our relationship to our emotions a little bit. Because I think as women, we are typically allowed a wider range of emoting. But just because it's allowed doesn't mean that it is valued. Okay? And this is really, really important. Because just because you were allowed to cry, maybe you were allowed to be upset or yell, or there was some allowances for that type of expression in your home, or even just like at a society level, doesn't mean that that expression is valued, and doesn't mean that you are on good terms with that expression. Because often we emote and we also feel guilty for emoting. We feel shame about how we emoted, how we expressed ourselves. We also feel like less respected when we do that. Maybe we dismiss anything that comes out at that intense level because of these messages that we've internalized. So we're going to do some journal prompts around that. And I want you to start, again, like 2 or 3 minutes and just journal out whatever comes to mind, stream of consciousness, starting with like, go back to as a child, okay? And just, if it helps to take a moment to breathe and just imagine yourself as a kid, and just whatever age that pops up, whether you hear an age, see an age, or just an image of yourself and you kind of know where she's falling in, your childhood. Like, what were you told about being emotional? Either directly about your own emotions, or how you remember observing how people talked about other people being emotional. And the second prompt is, at that same age, what did you think about yourself? If you can remember, what were the thoughts that went through your mind when you were being emotional? Did you think like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, or I need to stop this, or, any of that sort of guilt or shame? Like, what was the internal dialogue at that time? And then the third prompt here is, how did others actually respond to you in those moments of emotion? So besides language and words that happened, like, were you sent to your room? Did they sit with you? Did you feel supported? Did you feel abandoned? Did you feel overwhelmed by those emotions, scared, out of control? What happened when you expressed emotions, and how did you feel in that? And now I want you to take a moment, again, close your eyes if it's helpful, taking a couple breaths and imagining yourself as a teenager, allowing whatever age, whatever like presentation or image of her to emerge. And I want you to journal on the idea of like, did the external or internal messages that you received and internalized about being emotional change when you became a teenager? Did the quality, did the messages, did anything change from your childhood answers to when you became a teenager? And now I want you to come back to like present day, thinking about your current relationships, whether that's a spouse, whether that's with your kids, friends, with your parents, even like how that relationship looks present day. And again, take 2 to 3 minutes to just write out all the ways that either those internal and external messages have changed in your present day relationships, or how they're showing up maybe in a different way in your current relationships. Okay, so now that you have this like full picture of, first off, sorry if you can hear the ice in the background. I don't know how well Zoom is blocking that out. But now that you have this sort of full picture of sort of your relationship to emotions and your beliefs around them, I want us to talk about a little bit of a reframe around like how do our emotions actually work? What are they here to do? What does this actually look like beyond all of these stories and beliefs that we've internalized? So our thoughts and emotions are feedback loops, and they can either be top down or bottom up. So our emotional experience can happen from a thought, whether one that's generated by our own mind or something someone says to us, and that can trigger an emotion in us. We can also feel an emotion, and that then creates a bunch of stories as our brain tries to make meaning and try to explain what it is that we're feeling. But in both cases, these things are ultimately creating sensations in our body. Okay, and these sensations, it's like that's what we feel when our nervous system is deregulated, like whether it sends us into shutdown or fight and flight. And ultimately what's happening is our brain and our body is replaying the past. And so what's happening is it's looking at what we feel. It's saying, I know this sensation. Let's take anxiety, for example. Maybe your breath starts to get faster and more shallow. Your heart's racing. Your brain says, I felt this before. And in all the times that I felt it in the past, this is what that has meant. That I'm afraid, that I'm not safe, that I need to fight back, right? And so then it predicts the current situation. And it says like, okay, based on these previous experiences, you need to either shut down or you need to fight or you need to flee. This is the action that you should take, right? And along with that will come all of the thoughts of like, oh, well, this person doesn't like you, or this person is this or that. And we start to create the story about the situation, but that isn't necessarily even based in the truth of that moment. It's the brain replaying what we know, what we've experienced. And so the difference in being reactive and just replaying what we know from the past and what we've experienced before is becoming the observer of the pattern. And to do this, at the beginning, it's really helpful to find our way to the sensation in our body. Because the sensation itself, like any given emotion, has like a 90-second lifespan, right? It begins, it comes to a peak, and it starts to decrease. That's like 90 seconds. Now, I know that we've all had experiences where we're like, there is no fucking way that an emotion lasts 90 seconds because I've been crying uncontrollably before for like an hour, or I've been stuck in emotion for an entire day and I can't get out of it. But what's actually happening in those moments is that we have the sensation, which if we are present with and allow it to pass and allow ourselves to feel it, is going to have like a 90-second wave. But when we fuel that experience with all the thoughts and all the stories about what it means about us to be feeling like that, or what it means about the other person because they said this or they did this, and we start to create all of that, those thoughts are literally fueling that sensation in the body and therefore the emotion. And so when we're stuck in more of that default mode, each of those thoughts is flooding our body with another wave, and those can be happening so close together and so back to back that it feels like this is just like one constant overwhelming sensation. And so the biggest thing that we can do is to create space to recognize that these are different things. The thought is not the sensation in the body. The emotion is not the sensation. The emotion is how we label things. The emotion and the thoughts are how we make sense of what our body is feeling. But these are all separate things that contribute, and we want to start to break this down because that's how we get beneath it. Okay, we want to get beneath the trigger to see what's true, to see what is needing support, what's feeling unseen, unheard. What is that defensive mechanism protecting? And how can we support that? And so that's why if you can take a few breaths, right? And pause and allow the sensation to move through you before you act, or catch yourself in the thought and bring yourself back to the present. Like, all of those things are great. But I also really love the emotional freedom technique as a tool to help us get to the sensation in the body, and more importantly, to break the connection between the thoughts and the beliefs that we have around the emotions or around the experience and our physical experience of them. This is one way, one tool that we can use to rewire that pattern in our brain and in our subconscious. So I hope this is helpful. And of course, I want to hear your feedback. I want to hear your questions so that we can clarify, and also, if needed, get a little bit more practical and applicable to situations in your life.